welcome to True Crime with Kris. In this episode, I'm going to take a quick look at the three main suspects of the Delphi murders. So we'll be having a look at Richard Allen, Ron Logan, and Kegan Kline. Now each of these people were looked at during the Delphi murders investigation. But it's important to note that only Richard Allen was later charged and convicted in connection with the killings. Okay, so first, Richard Allen. Why was he a suspect? He was eventually arrested and charged with the murders of Libby and Abby in October 2022. Now this is 5 years, over 5 years after the actual crime. Now investigators tied him to the case through ballistics evidence. That is, a bullet was found near the victims, apparently in between the victims, that matched the type from a handgun that Allen owned. And he was also identified by police as a person believed to be the bridge guy, that guy that was captured in Libby's video from the day of the murders. As well, Allen had also placed himself at the hiking trail on that very day in 2017. So, he said he was on the trail, but denied involvement at the time. After his 2022 arrest, prosecutors cited alleged incriminating admissions he made whilst in custody. And he was convicted in 2024 and sentenced to 130 years in prison. Now, in short, Allen became the primary suspect because of the physical evidence and the investigative leads that linked him directly to the scene and the victims. And that's what was presented in court. Now let's have a look at Ron Logan. Now, why was he investigated? Now, Logan owned the land where the bodies of the girls were discovered. And police obtained a search warrant fairly early on to look for evidence after they did find the bodies on his property. And in his initial interviews, he made statements about his movements that the police found inconsistent or even misleading. And this included an alibi that was later questioned based on data. This data being cell phone location information, which reportedly placed him in the general area of the trail around the time the girls disappeared, so it did not match the alibi that he gave. So some people interpreting court documents or early reports thought his voice or appearance might match what was seen in the evidence. So some people did think that he looked and sounded like the bridge guy. Now, despite all of that, Logan was never charged with the murders, and he was not publicly identified as a killer. He then later died in January 2022, before Allen's arrest. So that made any further legal action nearly impossible. Now, his name does come up because he was connected by location, of course, owning the property, and the early investigative interest. Not necessarily because the police thought that he was a suspect. And thirdly, we have Kegan Kline. Now, the police identified an online profile on Snapchat with the handle Anthony_shots, and also on Instagram. This was in 2016 to 17. And this profile had been communicating with underage girls. And law enforcement said that was the last time, the last profile that Libby had actually had contact with before she disappeared. And investigators also traced that account back to Kegan Kline, who was living in Indiana near Delphi at the time. They did do a search of his home just 11 days after the murders. So that is interesting there. And then in a 2020 interview, Kline admitted to creating the fake account and grooming underage girls online, including communicating with Libby. He was later arrested, charged and convicted on child exploitation and pornography offences related to that conduct, but he was never charged in connection with the murders themselves, and they did not publicly prosecute him as a co-conspirator. Now, his profile drew attention because it was linked to the victim shortly before the attack, but there is no official evidence tying him to the killings. So just in a quick wrap up of those three suspects, Richard Allen became the central suspect due to the forensic evidence, as well as witness and camera evidence, and he was later prosecuted and convicted. Ron Logan was investigated because of his property connection and some early questions, but he was never charged or identified as the killer. And Kegan Kline, he was tied to that suspicious social media account who had been having conversations with the girls, and he was charged with other issues, but not charged as part of their homicide. And to date, so far, Richard Allen is the only one who has been charged and convicted and has received 130 years, based on evidence from the ballistics and digital evidence. Though, today, he has actually appealed. So there will be more updates coming soon, though, as we all know, appeals can take quite a while. Okie doke, so you have been listening to True Crime with Kris. Thank you, and please be sure to subscribe so you can catch the next one.